Welcome back, everyone. It's me, Mike the Mapmaker, and it's Business Crime. I've already gotten started on a brand new map here. Got a few stamps already placed. It's quite important that I've done this, but we'll get to that in a minute. But what are we making here? Well, we're making a map of a farm, a farmstead, a place where farmers live and work. And I think it's actually going to make a perfect addition to our starting town suite of maps we've been making this series. These maps are here to give your players places where you can focus on crimes, where they can rob and do all sorts of shenanigans that we all know and love at the table. And you might be asking, Mike, why are we doing a farm? What could you possibly rob at a farm? Well, you know, we're covering a small starting town, and a small starting town would definitely have a few farms. It's kind of an interesting place to think about doing crimes. After all, these are probably going to be the poorest people in your starting settlement. So the treasure and loot you can find here, that's going to be a little bit more creative than the previous places. In fact, the previous maps we've picked, well, they have been a blacksmith, a bank, a apothecary. The things there are pretty simple. I didn't actually go into much detail on what you'd be robbing. I mean, the blacksmith, people probably robbing the good gear, like armor and weapons. The bank is clearly cash money. The apothecary is potions and magic scrolls and the like. So I didn't go into any detail on that one, but this one's a farm, and so we're going to be finding some interesting stuff. Now, I'm going to be honest with you right now. This farm map, it broke me a little bit. This took me a lot longer than usual. All starts in the barn, because here I'm trying to be clever with the lighting. Now, usually I'll just paint on the textures, I'll place the stamps, and then over that, I add a dark layer. That's kind of a shadow layer. And with extra lighting effects, it usually looks pretty good. But today I thought I'd push the boat out. You know what? I'll push Inkarnate, this software I'm using, to its limits. And so what I try to do is I try to take the textures I'm using and have dark textures and light textures and try to blend them, try to smush them about so it looks like there is lighting just straight away without having to add an extra layer of darkness on top. So I spent a while doing this, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to give you a spoiler warning. It didn't work. I mean, it looked kind of okay at first, but as I get further and further into the map, well, it just gets worse and worse, and it starts to really bother me. We'll deal with that later, though, when we do the variations of the maps. In the meantime, though, we have a big feature, and that is, of course, the wheat fields. This is what the farmers have been planting, the crops they've been tending to, and hopefully harvest is just around the corner. So jumping back to the barn, I'm going to be messing around with all that stuff for quite some time during the video. One thing I am really happy with, though, is the outside layer, the wooden walls. You've got the lovely red wooden paneling going around and an inside insulation wooden layer that helps blend it all together, because without that middle layer, well, the raised first floor looks a bit goofy, looks a bit strange with the perspective of the red paneling. Now, as I jump around the map, I'm going to be adding things like an outhouse, some stables for the horses, a front porch for the farmers to sit out as the sun goes down. And I like to go around, add trees, try to attack the map from all directions before I lock in and get really intense with my decorating, just in case that later down the line I actually decide to change up the layout of things. It doesn't mean I waste any hard work. Again, I've made another well. I've done it in the same sort of vein as the well we did outside the bank. This time, we developed the rope around the well. I used a line tool and curved it around the bucket. I faded it into the well. So it looks like there's a bit of rope draped over. I think it looks quite natural. I'm quite happy, and I like the way it wraps around the bucket. Now, you might notice we've got a little trap door there. I mean, that, of course, leads to a nice little snug basement. Nothing weird and suspicious here. Wouldn't worry about that. I mean, I just did this on the fly, a bit extra. I haven't mapped it out or anything. I mean, it's a bit spooky down here. What's with the mannequins? Anyway, back up on the top, and we're working on the ground floor. I've added a little shoe rack here. There's a big sun hat. We've got fireplace area, big dining area. And with this one, because I've zoomed out a little bit more than usual, I've got these buildings spread out. Well, the scaling became a bit of an issue, and if you're paying attention, you might notice I have to rescale a lot of stuff during the footage, during the map making process. And of course these folk are a little bit poor, so I've tried to decorate with stamps that are a bit more appropriate. We've got some torn up, faded looking rugs. In fact, all the wood in these maps I've faded, I've desaturated a little bit to give it a little bit of a worn look, as if this has been standing maybe for a while, or it was less quality wood that they used to build out the actual building. That's strange, there's a little junkyard out here, and this is probably the stuff they've managed to collect over the years, scraps. Being poorer folk, they'll need to put it together. Hang on, is there a figure out there? Who is that? Whatever, back to the map making. And it's a simple job to now go around the outside and add all the details that make the wilderness feel a bit more alive. So we're going to add lots of textures to the grass. We've got long grass on top, a bit of moss mixed in, some thorns, and we're going to throw in the roads as well, lots of mud and tracks. I think the best way to make roads look good in Inkarnate is just to keep adding different layers and variations of mud and blending them together. It makes it feel really lived in. Now, whatever reason you brought your players to this map, be it for criminal acts, or maybe they're here to help the farm folk, maybe they're fighting off a monster or something, maybe they did a quest for the farmers and now come back and telling them all about their adventure and hoping to get a reward. Whatever it is, what treasure could there possibly be here? Well, I've got a few ideas. I think with farmers, you might have one of those ancestral weapons, like a sword that's been passed down for generations. It could be something religious, maybe an amulet dedicated to a god of farming, the god of the harvest, something like that. Maybe it has healthy, regenerative properties. You can also find something on the farm that the family who lives here doesn't realise is so valuable. Perhaps they found a random scroll out in the woods one day and you realise it's a high-level magic spell. With this location, I think it's a really good place to be creative and throw in something a bit random, a bit out of place, because that creates a story in of itself. How did it get there? Why did the farmers have it? Do they know what they've got on their hands? Interesting questions. Okay, we are done with the ground floor. We're now going to move up to the first floor. So I just duplicate the map and I get rid of a lot of the unnecessary ground floor details. I start to add roof components because this is a farm. We're going with that sort of hay thatch roofing. It's quite good for insulation, a bit of a fire hazard though. I think it's quite charming, and I'm trying to change the first floor of the main building to be a bit more of an interesting shape, so it's not just the exact same shape as the ground floor duplicated. I am trying to line it up vertically though. We've got an extra fireplace in the parents' bedroom. I'm going to make 2 bedrooms as well. One of them, I want them to be the kids' bedroom, so we're going to throw some toys in, a little bit similarly to how we did in the blacksmithing episode. The other room is, I think, going to be maybe a guest room or a room for teenagers, slightly older kids of the farm. I think the farmers probably have a lot of kids to help out with the labour and all the tasks you've got to do with a big farm like this. And it's at this point, have you spotted, I made quite a big error. I made a bit of a mistake in the early part of the map. I should have really planned this out. But when I made the barn, I started with the first floor, not the ground floor. So I created a raised platform that is the first floor. It's like a storage area in the barn. We'll cut over to it in a second. I'm really happy with how it turned out, but of course the big problem we struggle with is now I can't copy and paste it. It's too much stuff and I'm making these variational maps, so it's going to take me a little extra time because now I'm going to have to construct the ground floor section and then make another map using that, and then have to correspond between the two to make sure they match up with all the details. So if I'd been a little bit more forward thinking, I could have avoided this problem a little bit. But hey, what can you do? You make these mistakes, and the whole extra layer thing with the lighting, well, that's its own problem as well. In a minute we're going to see I have an issue where with software like Inkarnate, it's a little bit like Photoshop, where you have various layers and you have the stamps that go on certain layers, you have the background where you can paint on. If you're creating a room, you can have the floor be separate, so you could have painting of the ground, and then you could have another texture on top covering up the ground. It's part of a room. It just is a lot of stuff interacting, and you can see with the lighting you have to interact again with the filter as well, because the filter that's making it look like night, that's another layer as well. So I now have to go through on this barn and adjust a bunch of stuff. I have to create a ground floor, and I'm also going to change up all of the hay we put on the floor, and that clever lighting texture trick I tried to do, well, now I have to go and erase it and just do it the old-fashioned way. This does give me the opportunity, though, to add some more detail to our barn on the ground floor underneath the storage platform. Well, I'm going to add some kegs. I don't know, they're brewing up some moonshine, maybe. There's a tool station. Little desk with some tools on it. There are a bunch of big farming tools in the corner, and again I get to slap a bit of hay on the floor and make it feel a little bit farmy. Make it look a bit farmy. Not sure what I'm talking about at the moment. I've been staring at this farm for far too long. The end result, though, I think is actually really cozy. We've got lanterns and candles illuminating parts of the barn, but not all of it. So I can imagine wandering in at night. Maybe you're staying over. The farmer might have allowed you to rest for the night, and so you're going to sleep on a big pile of hay, ready for a new day of adventuring. Next up, onto another problem I had outside the front. I made a patio of these big slabs. I accidentally deleted on one of the maps the dirt on top. So now I have to go back and forth with the other map to try and match it up as best as I can. It's a bleeding nightmare. What's wrong with me? Honestly, with all the setbacks and issues, I feel like I've taken some psychic damage in real life. If only there was some way I could be healed. Healed by you, the viewer. Oh, wait, hang on. It's time for me to shamelessly beg for a like and subscribe. That's right, I'm just going straight to your face. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot, and if you've gotten this far, you clearly enjoy me suffering, so it's a win-win for everybody. Okay, now it's kind of hard to talk about anything new because I am having to go over and retread old ground with my editing. I will say I'm quite happy with the rooms. Now, I had a bunch of the same beds again and again, and it can look a bit samey and a bit unnatural, even if you try and flip the art around, mirror it. So what I did was added extra details to the beds, like teddy bears on the beds for the kids, and a nice lush pelt for the adults' bed to keep them warm in the winter, even though they've got that great big fire. So I'm feeling my confidence build. We're getting so close to that final save and publish. Okay, so at this point I start to have technical issues. I don't know if it's something with my browser, but essentially it grayed out everything and I couldn't save it, so I lost quite a bit of progress on the lighting, so I had to redo that again. Fortunately, I do save quite often, and then another mistake came along, and it just made the entire floor blue. It, like, deleted all of the background painting, which makes me want to do some sort of submerged map, maybe a flood's come along, but that's not what the objective of today was. So thankfully I managed to repair that as well. There was a brief moment where I thought I'd lost potentially hours of progress. Very scary stuff. Always save your progress every 5 minutes, kids. It's you just take it from me, you gotta do it. And in this final stretch, well, here I am changing up the layers to make it so the light from the candles downstairs is visible partially from our perspective, but the upstairs raised platform is dark. And it took me a few tries to get it. Eventually I managed to crack the formula and perfectly layer it. And you know what? I think the end result looks wonderful. I really like this barn. Took ages, but it's the good stuff. The last thing then is to go around the maps and do the last painting of the darkness, adding quite a strong vignette. I think that makes the dark even more dark and the light even more light, and I like that contrast in the night maps. And with that, I think we actually might be finished. Let's take a look at these final map results. What can you download? Oh, check it out. Some highlights from the map for me have got to be the wood chopping station. I like my cozy little kitchen. I stuffed a lot of props in here. And I like the scarecrow. You can't have a big farm like this without a scarecrow. Who knows, maybe it's a monster. That brings us to the end of another episode of It's Business Crime. Maybe you're not doing something super criminal, maybe you're sneaking in and delivering a love letter to someone who lives at the farm. Something like that, you know, you can do sneaky, clandestine stuff. It's still breaking and entering, but it's not really a bad thing. Something like that might be cool, I don't know. Shout out in the comments anything cool you could think of to do with this map. Oh, if you're still wondering about the stamps I placed before I began map making, well, what if I told you that the map I made was actually hiding a dark secret? What if I told you that this map wasn't really about a farm at all, but what the farm was covering up? Because if we go back into that basement, we find a secret button and open a secret door. Maybe there's more to this farmhouse than we thought. Tune in next time to find out what this map is actually hiding. Who knows what it could be? Secrets abound. I'm Mike the Mapmaker. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you for the big reveal next week. Bye!